deeply appreciate your efforts to kind of lift up voices in independent media that are doing the work to cover worker issues, to cover important political issues, and to bring on critical voices and expose, like the public to those voices in a way that mainstream media won't. And, I think that one of the things that I think I've known since I wrote my first article, for the Baffler years ago, right, is that not just in the left or progressive media sphere, but in the kind of digital media ecology that we're all living in and trying to survive in, the incentive structure of that media ecosystem pushes us in directions that are directly at odds with building political coalitions, with fusing, like bonds between people through solidarity, right? We're actively fighting against those incentive structures that actually try to train us to feel like we're all competing with one another, right? And that if Jordan gets views on his great coverage of the Starbucks unionization effort, that means that we're not getting those and we should be pissed off about that. No, the point is that we are all up against this massive tightly controlled corporate media system. And we are all fighting, again, as you just said, to attain visibility in this sort of carnivalesque funhouse that Silicon Valley has created for us, where they can effectively with any tweaks to their black boxed algorithms that none of us know what those tweaks are, how those algorithms really work. That's all proprietary stuff that's kept in secret. And yet, our very livelihoods and our very ability to stay informed about our world are controlled by these giant corporations that have a very vested interest in suppressing the kind of work that we do in independent and progressive media. So, with all of that working against us, I think it is incredibly important to do what y'all are doing, to do what we try to do at the Real News, which is collaborate, right? To again do what you can to work against that incentive structure that teaches you to see other folks doing great work as competitors in a zero-sum game for clout, views, and subscriptions. We have to be working harder to lift one another up, to bring our audiences in conversation with one another, and to sort of build through that kind of patchwork process a public that has a shared notion of truth, that has at least some sort of common ground to have political dialogue on. That's what we're seeing with the kind of algorithmic echo chambers that are created, with the sort of like fandoms that develop around certain network cable shows or certain YouTube shows. You end up kind of having these sorts of tribes of information that we're not even really, the farther we go in that direction, the less we're even having the same conversation. This is something that I realize when I do talk to conservatives who only watch certain types of media or who want me to respond to certain issues. I find it very hard to actually address the things they want me to, because if I'm not actively watching what they're watching and I'm just kind of doing my own research, there will be so many points that like are very important to them that I'm like, I don't even know why that's important, or like what, I didn't know that that was a major thing on your radar. So that's one of the reasons, again, going back to where we started, that I do try to kind of at least know what is going on in these other sort of pockets. But
Yeah.
I think that as a strategy, as a political strategy, as a political necessity, all of us involved in independent media need to be actively working against that fragmentation of a public that increasingly is becoming unrecognizable to itself.
And the one thing we've definitely noticed, we don't know how the algorithm works, but we know one part of how it works, and that is it feeds off of drama. So if we turned our show into just basically a show that just criticizes other YouTube, content creators, we would probably do pretty well because a number of other shows have done that. They basically just spend time. You remember?
They exist just to comment on other content creators.
Yeah, I mean, we couldn't believe how long they were able to stretch the whole Cenk versus Jimmy thing, and it's like every day, and this they said this thing, and that tweet said that thing, and again, you get a lot of views, and some have actually built channels off of it. I mean, it's amazing, but at the same time, it's not surprising because at the end of the day, the non-corporate side of things, which is what we're involved with, if we're fighting amongst ourselves, that means, corporate power is maintaining itself.
Well,
So they're
that's
going to feed it.
that's the thing. We don't understand the algorithm, but we know who it serves. So it's very obvious that it's basically the tech world's version of keeping us all fighting amongst ourselves. And I laugh at it because it's so ridiculous to me that, like, I really do. I feel like it's when I was a kid, I would have said, you people need to get a life. You really need to get a life. Like, there's really important stuff going on, and that isn't getting covered, and you're just being a distraction. You're just adding to the distraction. There's really important things that are happening. Like what you said, when somebody asks you about something, you're like, I don't know what you're talking about, because it's some obscure talking point that they heard on whatever show they're watching, and yet you're interested in what actually is happening. And so those are very different things. And I'm often out of the loop when it comes to what's going on in mainstream culture.
And you also mentioned, what is the other side? What are the more libertarian independents and even conservatives thinking? Jen went on Tim Pool's show, and it got a lot of views. It was like 600,000 people saw
How
it.
many? What percentage of them called me Karen?
Maybe a third, but but that's somebody that we would consider a friend, and we don't agree with a lot of what he says, but at the end of the day, you have to know, like, his audience is big, and you have to know what they're thinking as well. Like, what are they prioritizing? And I think that in itself is also something, when I hear people say, well, you can't go on Fox News or whatever.
That's how you build alliances. That's how you find commonalities.
You don't have to go on there and say, yeah, I agree that all immigrants should go back to wherever they came from. How about, listen, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I believe, and maybe we could find common ground. And so
teach their people. That's the other thing. It gets our message to a whole different audience that would otherwise not have our message.
I agree.
And as long as our message is still on point, that's the only thing that matters. It just exposes it to new people that can just be angry and call you Karen, which is fine.
Well, that's I'm glad that we ended up there, because I think that's like really the point to underline, right? Because even after stressing, as I just did, right, the importance of collaboration, I think that it's also really important that we don't fall into that same sort of trap of having an insiders club that corporate media has developed over decades, right? And so what I mean by that is one of the things that does depress and infuriate me, not only as a media professional myself, but as a brown person in a very white dominated media sphere, who constantly has to kind of hustle to get people to take me and my voice and the people that I cover seriously. What I have learned through hard experience, as many others have learned and are learning right as we speak, right, is that you do have these sorts of in-group dynamics. You do have this sort of high school mentality, whereby different YouTube shows, podcasts, media productions, so on and so forth, the focus starts to become like, can the different hosts, can the people in charge of those operations be friends or friendly, right? And I think what I would stress to folks is that it is absolutely important to find, as you said, that common ground, to know what people on opposing sides are thinking, respond to them, not so that we could all sort of like gel into this gray mush, right? Where we somewhat agree on this or that thing, but so that we can make a strong case for the principles that we believe in, the politics that we know we need in this country and beyond, to get us out of the like truly horrendous situations that we are currently in. And so I guess the sort of point that I'm making is that when we do go on these other shows, when we do reach out to these other audiences, when we do try to kind of know and understand what people who think differently than us are actually thinking, right? Again, the point is not to just kind of be chameleons and adapt ourselves to what these other audiences will like, to the point where our own principles become, unrecognizable. The point is to actually go in there and make that case for the things that we believe in, to stand by our principles, to speak up for working people, to speak up for the oppressed, to hold power to account, to point out that the different solutions people may be coming up with to address things like world historic inequality, climate change, so on and so forth, that we should not be blaming immigrants, that we should not be blaming other sectors of the working class, that we should not be like finding these different scapegoats. We need to keep our eye on the ball, because the people who are oppressing us, the people who are screwing us over, the people who are getting off like bandits right now are very apparent, right? And so we have to keep that our eye on that. Point being, again, as I said, is that I think it's really important, like y'all were just saying, to you know find those different audiences, know exactly what they are thinking. But I see a lot of self-serving folks in the media essentially try to kind of endear themselves to different types of audiences because they have a product to sell. They want to build up their subscriber base, their viewer base, but they're not actually serious about kind of conveying a political message that can actually address the things that we're up against. They're more concerned, like people in mainstream media are, with just making friends and building a career. And so all of us have to be vigilant, right? To kind of go forth, as you guys were just talking about, right? Go forth, spread the good word, be attentive listeners, know what people want to hear us respond to, but really kind of plant our flag in the ground and say, like, look, this is who we are, this is what we stand for, this is why I think you should come over to this side. And I think it's a tough thing to negotiate, especially when, as we just said, we are all hustling in a media ecology where our very livelihoods are dependent upon these algorithms that we don't control, on subscriber bases that are spread all over the place. So again, the incentive pushes us in different ways, but we've got to kind of like walk and chew gum at the same time, as I always say.
Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.